evening, everyone. This regular meeting of the Aurora Board of Education is called to order. Please rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Wallison, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis.
Here.
Mrs. Connor.
Here.
Mr. Sapolsky. Here. Mrs. Dolstein.
Here. Before we move into our special reports and recognitions tonight, I would just like to say that it was 1 week ago from today that Jerry Kohansky passed away. And we all at this table felt that it was right and fitting to not meet last week and to postpone it for a week. But we're here tonight and we must carry on and move forward. But before we do, I'd like to take a moment of silence and just remember Jerry's passion that he had for this district and his love for the students and his commitment to his leadership role, and to his wife, Mary, who's always in the front row and is our biggest cheerleader. I would like for you to take this time, this moment, and just see it as a sign and a symbol of our appreciation for Jerry's time and his effort and his dedication to this district for nearly a quarter of a century, and also to you, because I know that you were a big part of that. So just a few seconds of silence. All right, thank you. And now we will move on to special reports and recognitions.
Yes, we have our Rotary students that we're going to be recognizing. I think Bill's got the sheet that we're going to be recognizing Brandon Whitner and Maria Parks from the high school. I think we need to approve them first before the recognition to the correct.
Okay, so can I have a motion, please? Second? Okay. Mr. Collison, please call the roll.
Mrs. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Sapolsky. Yes. Mrs. Mahalis.
Yes.
Mrs. Dolstein.
Yes.
Okay, so now Mr. Hayes, if you wouldn't mind coming on up and introduce Brandon and Maria.
All right, thank you to Mr. Roberto and to our board. Appreciate the opportunity to be able to spotlight some of our students here this evening. First up, we're going to recognize Maria Parks, senior here at the high school. And when I had the opportunity to speak about Maria at our Rotary Club meeting a couple of weeks ago, what just stands out in my mind is the fact that she's a culturizer. Everything that she does, she elevates, she makes better, she makes those around her better. She does it with just such a positive attitude, uplifting spirit. It's a pleasure to be able to work alongside students like her each and every day. Just this weekend alone, she and a group of other students took the reins to lead a food drive where they made hundreds of copies of flyers, went around different neighborhoods around Aurora, and collected just seemingly countless amounts of donations from our community to help our local community. And this wasn't something that was part of a large initiative. This was something they wanted to do as just dedicated students and who care about their surroundings. So on top of that, involved in just about everything, libero and the volleyball team, and it's just an absolute pleasure to be able to, like I said, to work, learn, and grow with her. So I'll let her speak a little bit more about herself and why she's being recognized here this evening. So it's my pleasure to first and foremost introduce Maria Parks.
Good evening. To start, I would first like to thank the Board of Education for recognizing me for this award. Being given Rotary Student of the Month is truly an honor. Today with me is my mom, Lisa, and dad, Scott. Without their constant support, I would not be where I am today, and I am extremely grateful for them and everything they have done for me. When looking into the Rotary Club, anyone would be able to see how these are people who want to make a difference. The causes Rotary brings awareness to and all of the programs they are part of inspires me to want to make a small impact on the huge one they have already made. In the past 4 years of high school, I have found myself getting very involved in many extracurricular activities. Some of these including Aurora High School Volleyball Team, Student Council, Interact Club, and Euchre Club. This year in Student Council, I have taken on the role of being Vice President. Not only do I spend a lot of time collaborating with teachers, supervisors, and other student leaders, but I also work with peers and community members to organize events for our school. Most recently, we did a school-wide food drive for our local food bank and a blood drive for the American Red Cross. I love working at these events and knowing I'm potentially making a difference in someone else's life, whether it is big or small. In my past 4 years of high school, I've taken so many fun, challenging, and different courses that test me as a student. But my favorite was the popular literature course I took this past semester with Miss Taylor. Going into the class, I expected there to be a lot of research and reading assigned books, but it was nothing like this. The class was an experience like no other. There are days we let our minds escape the real world and read our self-selected books. Other days we'd be writing letters to second graders about our love for reading, and other days we'd discuss books and the topics they brought to life. I loved how it was such an open and safe space where I got to share my love for reading with those who appreciated it just as much as I did. As the end of my senior year is quickly approaching, I'm making decisions about my future. Although they are not set in stone, I'm planning on attending either the University of Kentucky or the Ohio State University. At either of these places, I plan on majoring in computer science. I also plan on getting involved in many club and intramural sports to keep up that competitive drive and meet new people. Once again, I would like to thank the Board of Education for recognizing me tonight. I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you.
All right, I will also tell you that I am an active member of the Euchre Club, and Maria and her partner did beat me, I think, back in October. So, but that's fun. It just shows the kind of involvement our kids have, and it's awesome to be part of it with them. Next up, we have Brandon Whitmer, and Brandon is pretty much just a jack of all trades. He's pretty much involved in just about everything you can imagine. And he does so with just an incredibly kind heart. Earlier this year, had the opportunity to kind of collaborate with some other local principals to work with the LLS and having groups of students who would kind of take on some leadership roles to help raise money and do different things for that organization. And Brandon just stepped up without hesitation and is leading one of those teams. He's done countless amounts of community service, but he's also an incredibly talented artist. You may have seen on social media this weekend him being recognized for numerous awards and accolades. And what stands out about Brandon is his character too. This weekend when he was recognized at the podium, when many students who just said what they were recognized for, Brandon made sure he took the time to thank Mr. Barrett and his teachers for all the work that they've done to help him grow as an artist. And again, it just speaks volumes to the type of young man he is. And on top of that, he's also an incredibly important member of our tech team. In our main office conference room, he fixed our TV for me so that we could hook our computer up and do a bunch of Zoom meetings and things like that. And he's always there whenever you need him at a given moment's notice. So I love being able to work with Brandon all the time. And it's my pleasure to introduce him here this evening. So welcome, Brandon Whitmer.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Brandon Whitmer, and I understand that I'm receiving the honor of Student of the Month. This means a great deal to me, and I appreciate the fact that I was even considered for such an honor. Thank you to all the board members for this. I'd also like to thank my parents. My dad wasn't able to come, but my mom's here tonight. I'd like to thank her for pushing me to constantly be the best version of myself. From as young as I can remember, my parents constantly set an example of being a better person. For example, I remember my mom and I driving past a homeless man in the street. She took me to the store to get peanut butter and bread to make sandwiches to eat. I handed it to the man and watched him cry as he told me he had kids to feed but no money. Even as a child, I saw that when you help one person, you help everyone. Currently at the high school, I'm heavily involved in our Interact Club and NHS where I volunteer often, whether it be through our local senior home or a local elementary school. Some of my best memories of volunteering through these clubs are from my times at the local senior home. Some seniors have few visitors, so putting a smile on their faces and assisting them means a lot to me. I'm a member of our drug-free club also, International Club, and SAVE, which stands for Students Against Violence Everywhere. My favorite class this year at Aurora High School has been APR. This class has forced me to better manage my time and work harder than I had in the past. It's emphasized to me that great things come from hard work. After graduating, I hope to attend either Ohio State or Ohio University and become either an English or math teacher for high school students. My dream would be to come back to Aurora and teach here one day. Thank you all for listening and giving me such an honor.
Thank you, students.
Thank you, board. Appreciate it.
Okay. Always an encouragement to hear from the younger generation moving up through the ranks. We love hearing about what motivates you and your aspirations, so thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is board recognition.
Yes, Brandon, way to plant that seed.
Yeah.
Okay, well, as many of you know, January is School Board Appreciation Month, and I would like to take a moment to recognize the board for their leadership and service to the kids in the community of Aurora. For the board members, you'll see around the edge that we have a number of posters from Layton. Each of the Layton students signed all of those, so if you were to count, you'll have over 650 names up there. Just thanking you for the service that you've done for them and wishing you congratulations. You also have in front of you a couple of things. There's a special card and sweet treat from Miller, and when you open the card, you'll see what I mean, because there's literally little fingerprints that will be part of that card from our kindergartners there. We also have some other cards from, first of all, there's a certificate of appreciation from the Ohio School Board Association that will be in front of each of you, as well as a handful of cards from Ms. MacArthur's and Ms. Heffernan's first grade class. And then there's an envelope with handwriting on it that looks like it's from a second grader. That one's from me. So we really wanted to just take a minute to also share a short video that Mrs. Menta put together along with the Craddock staff, which we'll have right up here. It's just 3 minutes, and I think you'll enjoy it. So if you don't mind, let me switch to that. Let me try to start this again. Give it another 30 seconds.
We're educated. This is our first class. A message for you.
All right, so what I will do is provide you with the link to this, and you'll be able to see it. I think everyone gets a gist from it as to what was going on. I think maybe what I should have done is put it on so that it was all completely downloaded prior to getting here, and that probably would have solved our issue. But you get the idea. So really, again, thank you all of you for your commitment to the kids in the community.
Thank you. Great, next we will move into the hearing of public on agenda and non-agenda items. This period of the board meeting is allocated to hearing public comments on both agenda and non-agenda items. The board and administration do not respond at board meetings to questions from the audience, nor will they comment. Individuals wishing to comment should register on the comment sign-up sheet, which I have in front of me, that you all saw as you walked into the meeting tonight. The public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes, and each speaker will be limited to a total time of 3 minutes. The board treasurer will keep the time. Right, Bill? And each person addressing the board is requested to provide his or her name and address upon being recognized by the chair. The treasurer will include this information in the board meeting minutes. So the first person on the list is Dave Edmonds. You may come forward up to the podium.
We've heard recently, or just briefly, from the younger generation. Now you're going to hear from the older generation. President, Vice President Hollis, and members of the board, my name is Dave Edmonds. Reside at 376 Ravine Drive. I lived in Aurora for 50 years. I have no students in the Aurora system, but have 3 adult children who matriculated through the system in the 1970s and 80s. The education they received served them well, both in higher education and in the workplace. There have been much discussion and disagreement before the board with respect to mastery policies. While this may be a legitimate subject for community concern, I come before you this evening with what I consider to be a higher priority for your consideration. Specifically, certain portions of the curriculum being taught in the middle and high schools of our system. You're aware of the curriculum and parental involvement issues being raised around the country. Circumstances in Loudoun County, Virginia, the Virginia gubernatorial election, and closer to home in Hudson. Have been well documented and are indications of the level of concern in which these matters are being elevated on a national scale. Inappropriate subjects such as critical race theory, 1619 Project, and other distorted views of our country's history are being taught today in other suburban systems. Additionally, sexual orientation matters are being improperly encouraged without parental involvement, again, in other systems. I exchanged emails regarding these matters in June with Dr. Paul Milsatich. Dr. Milsatich was prompt and direct in his responses, and I thank him for his time and courtesy. These exchanges notwithstanding, I have reason to believe that some classroom instruction may be being presented so as to influence students to the instructor's position on societal or political subjects. In my view, instruction must be presented with legitimate information and data on both sides of an issue. We must teach our students to think for themselves and come to an informed decision based on factual presentation. Teaching political ideology or societal subject matter so as to convince students that one position does not serve the student or the community well. We must teach students how to think, not what to think.
3 minutes, you're up.
I'd like to I will close very quickly. The ability to think analytically and practically is one of the most important subjects or skills that primary and secondary education system can provide for the students. In summary, my message is to the board, the administration, and to parents. Collectively, you need to know what's being presented in the classrooms. Parents can query their sons and daughters. The board and administration need to be in the classroom and reviewing core syllabuses in areas of my concern. The Aurora school system has an excellent reputation regionally and statewide. Let's keep it that way. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Next is Martin Molesky.
Good evening, Martin Molesky, 681 Creekside Drive, and father of 2 Layton students. I want to start by extending my condolences to the Kohansky family, the members of the board, past and present, and to the teachers, staff, and administration who worked with him during his time dedicated to building and preserving the world-class educational opportunities we have in Aurora. I did not know him personally, but his work speaks for itself. We have all benefited from his commitment to service, and we will miss his leadership and steady guidance. There's no good way to transition to the topic that many of us are probably here to talk about today, but in some ways related, and I will get to that later. I last spoke in November about the need to have some humility as it relates to how we treat each other. I called on the community to resist the urge to point fingers and to simply respect the decisions that families make for themselves and our children, even if those things differ. I spoke a bit about my belief that we have far less control over the virus than we think, and what has transpired over the past 2 months only reaffirms my belief. I want to remind everyone what we now know. CDC has said 2 things. 1, cloth masks are not very effective at stopping the transmission of COVID. 2, everyone will eventually get COVID. What we have done is delay the inevitable. So with those 2 facts, we must now accept that children have suffered more than any other group these past 2 years. Unnecessary stress, fear, the increase in self-harm, and educational setbacks will be felt for decades, not because of COVID, but because of our reaction to it and a certain unwillingness from some to return to normal. There is a world that exists beyond the walls of this room, of your classroom, and beyond our schools. There's a reason it's called community spread and not school spread. Because there is a world that exists where an increasing number of people are living their lives without thinking COVID is the biggest threat to them. Thanks to the power of social media, it's easy to see that some of the loudest voices mandating masks for all are not mandating masks for themselves or their children outside of school during large parties or social gatherings. If you want your child to wear a mask in school, that's fine with me. Do not force a decision on all children and staff and then act differently the moment the final bell rings. Should not, cannot tolerate that hypocrisy. For the sake of normalcy and to protect the health, including the mental health of our students, I encourage the board here tonight to vote to continue to make masks optional, put this issue behind us, and begin to focus on more pressing educational issues. Which leads me back to Mr. Kohansky's legacy and the impact on this community. Not everyone agreed with him, and that's okay. But from what I can tell, his commitment never wavered on doing what was best to educate our students. That must always remain the focus of this board. This district and our students have thrived because that board was unified on this one purpose. To this board, do not lose that focus. Do not divide yourselves. There are bigger issues than masks, and our students and community expect you to plan for and resolve them. Please do not let us down. Please preserve the school district that Mr. Kohansky and so many others have worked hard to achieve. Thank you.
Next is Melissa Fontanella.
Hi, my name is Melissa Fontanella. I live at 680 Morgan Trail, and I have 2 teenagers at the high school. I am going to be responding to the revisit of the optional masking policy. I agree with the board vote to make masking optional for K through 12. 2 years into this pandemic, if masking worked, then we would not still be in the same situation. There's not been one single conclusive study in the entire world showing you that masks work. A conclusive study, as we learned in 6th grade science class, means that you have a control group. You have a control group, meaning that you have a group of students, some masked, some not masked, in the same setting with the same vaccination status and the same testing methods. And that has not been done anywhere. So any claims stating that masking works, even by the CDC, were not justified by any data. Now let's talk about the mask for a minute. The cloth mask, as the other gentleman mentioned, are virtually useless. They don't work. Surgical masks, the kids put in their backpacks in the cars, they don't wear them correctly, their nose hangs out, there's air gaping in the sides, and they have all kinds of bacteria and contaminant on them. So they're not even used properly. When they are used properly, they protect 3 microns and higher as far as particles go. Omicron is 1 particle, so it's not even protecting against the variant that you think it's protecting against. So they're wearing them for basically no reason at all. Viruses mutate, that is a known fact, and as they mutate, they become more contagious and less deadly. So a year from now, we're gonna have COVID. It's gonna be like the common cold. You can't keep masking our kids. A parent's job does not end when the kids walk into the school doors. Choosing to wear a mask or not wear a mask is our choice. Masks do have known health consequences for children. They cause anxiety, depression, acne, rashes. They aggravate asthma. And let's not forget about the younger generation, where there is a 364% increase in speech delays. At the beginning of the pandemic, it may have made sense to wear masks. We did not know much about COVID-19. But now, 2 years later, you can't have a one solution fits all.
30
0 to
seconds.
17-year-olds cannot be treated like 65 years of age and older. That is absolutely absurd. Instead of mandate mania, maybe you would want to focus on alcohol consumption, the vaping problem, and the increase in suicides that go on in the teenage generation, instead of putting a face diaper on our children. Thank you. To Jerry.
Next is Angie Frankman.
Good evening and who day? I first want to, my name is Angie Frankman. I live at 230 Ironwood Circle. I'm also a teacher at Harmon Middle School, 8th grade teacher, science teacher. And I want to start by saying how sad and heartbroken I was to hear about Jerry. Jerry forever has worked hard for this city in more ways than just the school board, and Mary right behind him. And his heart was always for the kids and for what's best for the kids. So he's going to be missed for sure. I am asking the board to reconsider their mask optional policy and ask them to reconsider a policy that would allow us to pivot if we do have outbreaks down the road. We know there will be more variants. We know there will be outbreaks within our school system, and currently the policy as it stands would not allow us to respond to that. I want to reiterate, at the middle school level and the high school level, a mask optional policy virtually means no one wears a mask. I have maybe 4 to 5 kids in each of my classes that wear a mask. And every time we go to the optional policy, I have to kind of remind the kids why some of us continue to wear a mask. I have one child who has a father who has had a heart transplant. I've got another child that's got a mom who's got cancer and undergoing chemotherapy. I have kids within my room that are immune compromised. So they continue to wear their mask. And I have to kind of tell the rest of the kids, hey, please respect the idea that some of these kids are going to continue to wear the mask. But I want you to know, if it's a mask optional policy, most of the kids at the middle school and high school do not wear masks, even if maybe their parents would want them to, because they just won't do that. So I just ask that the board consider a policy that would perhaps be more like what Mr. Roberto was
30
using before,
seconds.
that would allow the school system to respond to an outbreak. Thank you.
Well, I know that the first name is Charlotte. I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
Formos?
Yeah.
Sorma, yeah.
Hi, my name is Shaz Sorman, 252 Bird Road. I'm in 8th grade at Harmon Middle School. COVID-19 and the rules applied to it have affected many things. We had to miss 6th grade camp in 2020. We had to quarantine and go online multiple times throughout our 7th grade year. and now the Washington DC trip is canceled. My class of 2026 is the only class that missed both of these opportunities in our middle school year. Some cons of the mask are that you constantly are breathing in your own carbon dioxide all day long. It's difficult to breathe in, it causes communicating with others to be difficult, causes dizziness, headaches, and much more. A personal experience that I had not too long ago is that we had to wear masks during the PACER test. It's to test your cardio endurance. How is our test going to be accurate when we cannot even breathe correctly? I received a lower score on it than all my other scores over the past few years. When it was over, I got sick and was so dizzy. I felt like I was going to pass out and got sick in the bathroom. I am an athlete. I play multiple sports and do strength training for those sports. The PACER test has never been this difficult for me. I believe masks should be optional. I have nothing against people who do wear masks and who are vaccinated because that is their belief and that is their choice. But it is also my belief and my choice not to wear one and not to be vaccinated just yet. When masks were mandatory, kids were constantly being told, make sure to put your mask up or keep your distance. Even a girl in my class told me, you're the reason why people are dying because your mask is not up all the way. I can't even talk to my friend without being told to separate farther away from them or that I am putting people in danger. It is sad, disturbing, and affects so many kids on an emotional level, including myself. We shouldn't be forced to do anything that we do not want to do. It's called freedom.
Next is Alex, and I don't know, it's T-S-C-H-U-D-Y. What is it?
Alex Schutte, I'm at 820 Rock Creek Drive. I have a 13-year-old 7th grader at Herman and a almost 17-year-old junior in high school. You guys have taken care of the statistics and all that part, but I just want to talk about how my kids feel being masked all day. My daughter's excitement for school lessens dramatically. She's tired, she's fatigued. She has so many issues, especially anxiety. She had to see the counselor every week, multiple times last year because she had to wear a mask every day. And when we found out that mask optional started again at the end of this month, her excitement to go to school and get up and her energy level, and with my son gets threatened into detention every time he's talking and his mask comes down below his nose a little bit. He had someone in his face pointing their finger, telling him he's gonna get a detention. This isn't good for our children. He got COVID. He literally had a little headache and very light congestion for a day. And then he was perfectly fine. Also the case with all of his friends that got it, all my daughter's friends that got it. To keep masking our kids forever and ever over something that is less than the flu, we just can't keep doing this. And I'm talking from experience of the difference I see in my children, and I can't take it anymore. So that's all I want to say. Thank you so much.
Next is Eric Moyer.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Eric Moyer. I'm a Cleveland Clinic physician and the father of third and fourth graders at Layton. I reside at 805 South Sussex Court. I felt compelled to say a few words today because of the recent spike in hospitalizations that overwhelmed area hospitals, prompted the Cleveland Clinic and other area hospitals to put out an ad in the paper to the public to do more to reduce the hospitalizations there. Part of the plea was aimed at vulnerable, high-risk patients, urging them to get both vaccinated and boosted. Another part of that plea, the one that I will focus on here today, is the plea to the rest of the community to do more to protect these vulnerable people. I've been checking in on the adult ICUs at least once per week over the past month or so, and the pattern is clear here. These hospitalized adult COVID patients are all very vulnerable, either over 65 or with high-risk conditions like diabetes, obesity, cancer, and diseases of the heart, lung, liver, and kidneys. Most of them are completely unvaccinated, and a few are incompletely vaccinated. And a few very unfortunate patients got all the 3 recommended vaccine doses, but they were all receiving high-dose immunosuppressive therapy that prevented their immune systems from properly responding to the vaccines. So, what can mostly young, healthy, non-vulnerable students, parents, and teachers do to reduce the chances of vulnerable people in their community for being hospitalized like this? Well, they can certainly try to convince these vulnerable to get both vaccinated and boosted. But what is more under our control is minimizing the amount of COVID circulating in the communities around these vulnerable people. At this point, we know there are primarily 3 things we can do to reduce the amount of COVID circulating in our communities. Number 1 is vaccinating ourselves. Number 2 is not just masking, but masking effectively, as others pointed out. And number 3, social distancing. Being young and taking good care of our bodies is great for our personal health or personal protection. But unfortunately, it does not reduce the amount of COVID circulating around our most vulnerable. Gaining natural immunity may offer personal protection in the young and healthy who develop only mild symptoms. But allowing COVID illnesses to happen like this in huge, fast-moving waves is causing these overwhelming hospitalizations in the vulnerable that our hospitals, as great as they are, simply can't handle. And the result is profound harm to both the patients and the hospital caregivers.
3 minutes are up.
I'll wrap it up. Starting to effectively mask out after community spread has already spiked in our communities around our most vulnerable does not effectively prevent these spikes in hospitalizations. I believe this is a lesson worth teaching to our kids, the importance of protecting our most vulnerable through selfless acts. To help protect the most vulnerable in your community, please, and this is an ask, please get vaccinated and get boosted and wear effective masks, even if you aren't forced to, even if your personal health doesn't depend on it. As Cleveland Clinic CEO and President Tom Mahalik recently stated, we can overcome the pandemic through selflessness. Thank you.
Next is Tony Zayas.
Good evening. Tony Zayas, 131 Eldridge Road. I'm the father of a 6th grader. First off, I'd like to acknowledge that most of you worked very closely with Mr. Kohansky, and I'd like to express my condolences for you and for the loss of a colleague and a friend who leaves a lasting legacy here at our schools. On to the matter at hand here today. At the December board meeting, a few members expressed concern about the timing of the mask optional protocol's adoption. I think it was a noteworthy point that should be discussed. This protocol was voted on during a time where there was an uptick in cases nationwide. So why now? Why would we implement this protocol at this time? We've arrived at an important inflection point in addressing the pandemic, and it's time to examine a perspective that has long been neglected since we've had to react to this new threat. But now we urgently need to confront the long term and ask, when does this end? We know a new variant will be around every corner, and we've already learned that masks will not be the answer. They weren't the answer until now, they won't be moving forward. As others and people like Dr. St. John in the last meeting pointed out, the scientific nature of a virus is to adapt and mutate through variants, with every new one becoming weaker than the last, as has been demonstrated by the Omicron variant. Remember the saying, let the punishment fit the crime? Let's translate that to 2022. Let the precaution fit the risk. And let's put the hysteria aside and look at the actual risk. According to the CDC, the odds of an infected, unvaccinated person requiring hospitalization is 1 in 100. And that was reported prior to this current variant, which is known to be weaker than the last. For those who have compromised health, are at risk, or even if you're just fearful of the virus, take every precaution you feel necessary to protect yourself and your family. No one is arguing against that. But this is not the board or the district's place to force our kids to hide their faces and live in fear indefinitely when we know there are much more dire consequences our children are facing, such as the devastating mental health pandemic that the response to this virus has triggered. I'm proud of the board members who are leading, not cowering, through this turbulent time. Stay the course, stay consistent, and stand by the protocol that was voted into motion last month. Thank you.
I don't know your first name, Zayascar. What is your first name?
Julia.
Julia? Okay, you're up.
Good evening. My name is Julia Zayas. I live at 131 Eldridge Road, Aurora. My name is Julia Zayas, and I will be talking about the mask mandates and having the option to wear them. Now, this is my second speech, and since my last speech, many things have changed from having the masks as an option to not to have them on, and then the cycle just keeps on going back and forth again. We need to have this stop somewhere. We children should stand up for our rights and still be respectful and cordial to one another's decisions. We have to take control of ourselves and have our God-given rights back. Thank you.
And our last speaker this evening is Tracy Knopf.
Tracy Knopf, I live at 940 Creekview Drive.
Can you pick up the mic?
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
it's still Julia's size.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I have a child at Harmon and I have a child at the high school. And I want to start by talking to Mary and extending my condolences to you. Your husband was a wonderful man. And to the school board, I'm very sorry that you lost a very dedicated, good team member. I promised myself I wasn't going to cry. So let me get to the matter at hand, which is I decided to take a slightly different approach. And that is, I went to what seems to be the current Cleveland Bible for all things COVID, which is the cleveland.com website. And I decided to take a couple of just the highlights that come out every day because COVID is obviously very near and dear to everybody's heart. Here's the update from January 20th. COVID-19 Omicron surge appears to be over in Northeast Ohio, reports Julie Washington. In the 18 counties and 2 hospital regions that include Cleveland and Akron, the number of COVID patients is down 24%, while dropping just 1% in the entire rest of the state. The decrease has even been stronger within the 5 county regions of Cuyahoga, Geauga Lake, Lorraine, and Ashtabula, everything that surrounds us. Here's the update from January 24th. For the second consecutive week, daily COVID-19 counts in Ohio hospitals, including those in intensive care, fell, an encouraging sign that the Omicron surge is coming to an end, at least in Northeast Ohio. The daily COVID-19 patient count in Ohio hospitalizations dropped every day this past week. Week over week, the count was lower on Saturday, 5,376, than it was on January 15th. down 909 patients. Here's the update from today. The Ohio Department of Health on Sunday reported 5,224 new COVID cases, the smallest daily tally in 7 weeks. The daily count of newly reported coronavirus cases is regularly above 19,000. So, I'm not a scientist. I've done a ton of research on this, but it appears to me that the news is telling us that the cases are decreasing. I've seen a tremendous change in my children over the last 2 years. I believe that the children and the parents have the right to choose whether or not they should be masked. And I encourage you as board to honor Jerry's memory and his last official vote, which was to make masks optional. Thank you.
We're now going to take, we're going to change the order of the agenda. As it stands now, the revisit of the optional masking plan was scheduled for the end of the meeting, but a decision was made earlier today to just revisit it now so that those of you who are here for just that reason can go home. You're welcome to stay if you want to through the rest of the meeting, but we'll be done with that portion if you'd like to leave. So to recap, it seems like you all know this, but last December 20th, this board voted 4-1 to approve an optional masking plan effective January 25th with the option to revisit it on the 24th, and then we did not meet last week. So it's still on the table if anyone here wants to revisit it. I assume that you do, and if so, you have the floor. Yes or no?
Yeah, I would like to say something, and I want to thank everybody for your comments today and for being brave enough to stand up in public, so thank you. Hope you can hear me okay. When the vote happened in December, it was my understanding that we moved it out so that we could have an opportunity to talk about it, so thank you for offering that today, even though it's gone into effect. My concern for this being written as a procedure is that we are taking away Mr. Roberto's ability to administer the district in the best way that he sees fit from his safety officer perspective. And should there be another surge in cases in the community, I would hate to, what I understand the option would be, and Mr. Roberto, please, I invite you to give your thoughts here. If there was some kind of surge, his only option is to go virtual or to close a school or close a grade level. And I don't know about you, but I do not want to wish that upon the students and teachers again, that back and forth of being virtual or not being with their teachers and their friends. And so if the only option is that, because there is no other mitigating factor that would allow the masks to be put back on to potentially stop the spread, I would just prefer that we have the option, that we give the option back to Mr. Roberto with the new ODH guidelines that have come into place to come up with a new plan of when masks might be required so that we don't end up having to send everybody home. And Mr. Roberto, would you like to comment about that?
Certainly, yes. So I guess, as Mrs. Dolzine mentioned, that the Ohio Department, you're aware, the Ohio Department of Health has changed the requirements for contact tracing. So, and that was saving a lot of time for administrators as they're nodding their heads over here, and their nurses. So our COVID numbers are down, and had we been following the plan that was in place, our opening plan, we would have come out of required masking as of Friday because of our numbers. And as superintendent of the schools, just like those board members up here, I'm expected to take into account views and concerns for all the members of our school and community. And as a result, it is important that we are empathetic and able to balance, those concerns. My biggest concern is the impact on the district if our COVID numbers were to climb. And from my understanding, the latest changes to contact tracing from the Ohio Department of Health, the Portage County Health District would monitor if we were to have an outbreak cluster. And they would determine if contact tracing would need to be taken place and the potential to require masks. So I think as we've gone through, it's to no surprise, I would recommend continuing to follow the plan, but at the same time, I do understand the board's position, and I reiterate that I do serve at the pleasure of the board. And so, of course, I will follow the protocols that the board will ultimately put in place based on your decision tonight.
And if I could just say one more thing, I really hate that we are where we are. I hate this too. I hate that we are 2 years into this thing and we're all exhausted. We're all tired. And I want to thank you, Pam, for reminding us in the last board meeting to remember that the youngest kids are the ones that are being impacted by this choice. And I really, really understand that and I respect it. Again, I hate that we are here and I hate that we are at each other's throats and that we don't talk to each other anymore and that neighbor against neighbor. I don't like that we're in that place, but I think what my only argument is I'd like to give the administration the ability to administer the school district when it comes to safety, and I believe that belongs in the hands of Mr. Roberto. And I also believe that if we were to adopt, my motion would be to rescind this right now, just because we would be in masks optional anyway, given the plan that Roberto had in place before. Mr. Roberto had in place before. It's sort of a moot point at this juncture. The ODH has changed its policy, so it's time to revisit a new plan. We just give Mr. Roberto a chance to come up with a new plan and move on from there. So those are my thoughts.
Well, your comments are based on the premise that you believe that cloth masks work, and
Nope, I don't.
And you don't believe that?
No, I believe effective masking works.
Okay,
Strong, good, well-fitting masks.
Right, but children cannot wear better, well-fitting masks.
They can, my children do.
Well, most children would not, and no institution wants to be in charge of making sure that every child is wearing the proper 3-layer N95 mask or whatever it is. That just simply would not work. I think even the teachers would testify to that. They can't even keep the cloth masks up over their nose. I'm certain that if the board could be called for a special meeting and make any decision that we wanted to regarding masks or anything else. I think, as I've stated before, I think the zero COVID mentality has done immense social damage to children. And I think that any district that whose goal is zero COVID is filled with students who are stifled and repressed. And I think that's especially true of the little ones. I know many kindergartners, first and second graders, and this is normal to them. I mean, they don't even know what it's like to see a teacher's smiling face and to be able to talk at lunch and to not have plastic shields up and not have assigned seats and be able to go on field trips and sing in a concert without a mask. And I just think it's time to prioritize normalcy, which I said before, and then I was misquoted in the Advocate. What I said was it's time to prioritize normalcy. And I just think that we need to stay this course for now. We'll keep watching the numbers, and if there's another surge, we'll decide what to do, but I don't know that masks will be the answer.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows where I stand, everyone knows where we all stand. I could rattle off another list of schools that are going mask optional, like I did last time, new ones. The 26th, ODE ended the contact tracing. The 28th, Geauga Public Health recommended masks in school be optional. So hopefully we'll see a trickle down effect. If we all in agreement that the cloth masks don't work, it didn't change our numbers or any other surrounding schools' numbers, when the Omicron, hit or whatever. Before break, we had, higher numbers in masks. We were in masks after break. We had lower numbers, and that was happening all around. So I just, like, I just don't see the end game, I guess. I guess I would ask you, when would you think would be a good time?
Well, as of right now, Mr. Roberto's plan would have had masks be optional at starting Friday, and that is a good plan, but there is a plan in place to put them back if they're, as a mitigating measure against having to close the school. It's not, I mean, starting masks would be optional anyway underneath Mr. Roberto's old plan, so that would be my choice, is to go back to the old plan, so there's at least a trigger mechanism in place should we need it.
I disagree.
I'm against that idea because of what Julia said, that this business of on again, off again it's just not good for the children. You know, I think that we've had over the course of 3 school years, and it hasn't been 3 full school years, but it's been, children have been touched in 3 separate school years where they have had to suffer the side effects. They're the ones who have been harmed. It's the side effects of COVID with these masks and everything else. And I just think that there was a time in the beginning, and someone said this in their comment, when it was hard to not take all these measures because it was mysterious and it was scary at first. But we know so much more now than we did. We have vaccines, we have boosters, we have therapeutics. And so, again, I just think it's time to get back to
Any
normal.
student and teacher, anyone's, obviously, the kids are not being made fun of for wearing masks. It's actually the opposite in the younger grades. And I can say that personally, you know, so, but they're not, if the kids want to wear masks, if they want to wear N95, the other kids aren't making fun of them. I've not heard any stories of that. All the kids that I've been around, of all different grade levels, they're like, whatever, you know, we don't care. That's fine. They're friends, you know what I mean? They're fine with that. They don't care. And, you know, obviously the teachers can wear that or N95 and that's fine. Kids don't, you know what I mean? It's just not, it's not an issue. So if someone feels that protects them, then by all means, you know, that's totally fine. And like I said, the kids are not, I know at the beginning that was some concern, you know, if my kid's the only one in the mask, well, they're not, because there are a lot of kids still wearing masks in all the buildings. And like I said, the other kids they're fine with it.
Masks work best when everybody's wearing them because it does protect the person who is sick from spreading it. And Mr. Roberto has shared that data with us and has shared a number of
But that's
studies.
where the parent choice comes in. If I don't send my child in a mask and someone else is sick, I mean, I guess I'm taking that risk. They could get anything, strep, the flu, whatever, but that's my choice. That's my choice.
It is
as
your
a parent.
choice to potentially spread a disease to another student who
My child
may
doesn't
be
have a disease.
immunocompromised, who
They
may-
don't have a disease, and if they're sick, I keep them home, like always, like I've always done. Have they kept them home with the flu, with strep, with mono, with everything? No, but we weren't wearing masks then.
Right.
I mean, you could sit next to someone, your child could be sitting next to someone that has strep throat, that has lice, that has anything, we don't know. You don't know that, so if you want, if somebody feels like a mask, then that's fine. You know, I mean, like I said, that's not, there's no judgment, but we never, someone sitting next to them could have all kinds of things. And someone sitting next to them maybe hasn't had any vaccines ever their whole life. And that, you don't know that, you know what I mean? So no one was worried they were gonna get, you know, something from them. So I'm saying, like, it's out of control.
I think I just have the issue with the absolutes everybody likes. This is in things in boxes, the absolutes like Lennox don't work. I mean, they work. I mean, all police officers, paramedics, surgeons, we've been wearing them for years. Research shows that it's not 100%, right? It's not absolute. Nothing is 100%. Even alcohol you put on your hands, they can put on there. It's not 100%, but it is a barrier. So the more barrier you have,
And then
the less
let them
likely,
wear it,
right?
that's fine.
Right.
Absolute,
Yes.
it's not
So I'm
parent
just
choice.
clarifying The absolutes that everybody likes to argue.
Oh, I'm just saying, I think it should be
Choice.
parent choice.
It's your choice. Put it on your face. Right. Protect yourself.
Right.
This is
All right,
Dorothea.
so is there any more to discuss?
Say something, that's it.
Yes, this is Dorothea.
No, I'm sorry. this is the board's meeting that happens to be in public. You're welcome to listen, but not participate. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, so
All right.
if no one has anything else to say, we're just gonna move on. Just don't wake anybody up. All right, so now's the time if you wanna leave, do it now. Or you're welcome to stay. Oh, well, as it stands, the mask optional plan stays in place because it was voted 4-1 and we're not opting to change it tonight. All right, thank you. Okay, now we'll move to the approval of minutes from the December board meeting. May I have a motion, please? Chair seconds. Are there any comments or edits to the minutes? Hearing none, Mr. Mellison, please call the roll.
Mrs. Carr?
Yes.
Mrs. Hollis?
Yes.
Mrs. Dolce?
Yes.
Mr. Sibbles?
Yes.
All right, now we'll move on to the superintendent and assistant superintendent's report.
All right, well, Paul and I wanted to use this month's superintendent and assistant superintendent reports to focus on providing the first semester updates on our district goals. You each are getting a copy of these goals with the updates in bold, and those, although we will not be covering all the goals tonight, we wanted to be sure to give you an update in writing of each of them. Paul will be addressing some of the more curricular-related goals and for the district, and I will be providing updates on some of those goals that are related to school culture. So, as you know, the Aurora City School District uses the metaphor of schools as a greenhouse when describing the schools. This metaphor fits because both nurturing and growth should take place in a greenhouse and a school. So we believe the success of the Aurora City School District will ultimately be measured by how healthy, how strong, and how deeply rooted the individuals are that lead our schools. In order to nurture these roots, we established a district strategic vision that functions as a guiding light. And it includes 6 competencies which serve as the students' roots. Those competencies, as you are aware, are balanced, with resilient, innovative, collaborative, empathetic, and being a critical thinker. And they are the foundation of our district goals as well, as you can see on your sheet. So the first goal update I wanted to address falls under the competency of balance, which alludes to not only social emotional awareness, but also the school culture of considering the whole child. In order to empower all learners, it's important to eliminate any barriers to learning they might face. So that is why we are in the process of auditing our educational environments in order to identify areas of refinement and reinforcement. The audit basically is going to help us to find blind spots as we review 5 areas, including physical integration, social emotional engagement, opportunities to learn, instructional excellence, and engaged and inspired learners. And once the audit is complete, our next steps will be to review the data by building, and then as a district, in order to develop the next steps and therefore potential goals and professional development to empower all learners. These goals will be developed over the summer and put in place for the 2022-2023 school year. The second area of school culture I wanted to address comes from a goal which falls under the empathy category on your sheet. It's the second goal, which discusses designing learning environments. So if we believe kids come first, and we do, then learning environments which are designed to go beyond a curricular delivery model to one that prepares young people for life to be developed. And as a result, we have developed 5 specifications that all Aurora City school staff should consider when designing lessons or activities or even meeting agendas. Earlier, I mentioned the competencies, which are our strategic vision. These competencies examine what areas in which we want young people to grow, but the design specifications that you're getting now are how we as a staff are able to get to that point. So as you can see in the design specs, there's sort of 5 areas that we focus on when we're thinking of designing or developing lessons. So some of the things we ask teachers to consider are honor the identity through relationships. And you can kind of read a little bit about what we mean by that. We want to put kids in a situation where they have an opportunity to collaborate. So because learning is social, to get them to think differently, that it's an idea of nurturing innovation. And to honor the process, learning as a process rather than just as an outcome or a product is what specification 4 is all about. And really moving, although points and grades might help find a spot, moving beyond that to understanding and look at the continuum of learning beyond just points and grades is that 5th piece. And again, you can kind of dig into each of those. But what we've done is not every lesson would necessarily contain all 5 of the specifications, but as one designs lessons, all 5 really should be kind of considered as we develop our plans. So these design specs lead to classroom environments and experiences that help young people develop the competencies within our strategic vision. So we have helped staff begin to make the connection between these design specs and how the new OTES 2.0 teacher evaluation process during both staff and our PLC meetings are connected. The design specs also tie into the Ohio Departments of Education's Each Child Our Future vision that the state has for school districts. But by considering these 5 specifications when designing lessons and activities, young people are being exposed to better pedagogy and a nurturing classroom environment that is more student-centered and will lead to more growth as a learner, which will ultimately lead to Aurora learners being future-ready, according to our strategic vision. So this shift in pedagogy is going to help meet individual student needs, and that's where Paul will next address some of the curriculum-focused goals for our district. So, Dr. Mosevich.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roberto. Board. So as Mike mentioned, he was talking about the culture pieces. If you look at my report, focused on 2 particular curricular areas. Under resilience, it's gap closure, and under innovative, it's curriculum and pedagogy. And Mike alluded to sort of my 2 focal areas, which is essentially, trying to find those areas that we feel we need to help our students the most, and then creating those student-centered environments. So just to connect this to some of the things that I know you're familiar with from before, each year we get reports from the state of Ohio, the report card, and one of which is the AMO, right, which is essentially just different subgroups and if they're reaching their targeted levels of achievement. The problem with that type of data, though, and I drew a medical analogy for you guys, it's after the fact, right? It's not on time. It's not necessarily allowing us to be as responsive as we want to be. So I mentioned in there that we have a variety of ways we can keep a pulse on student learning. We have formative assessments, we have summative assessments, we have benchmark assessments that we sort of progress monitor along the way. We use that data with our teacher teams, with our PLCs, with our RTI and TSS processes, which includes, our principals, our reading math coaches, RTI coordinators. And so, that's really how we make sure that we understand where our students are and how we're responsive and how we adjust throughout the year. Well, we made, a variety of additions, changes this year, which I'm really proud of the hard work that's gone into this in multiple levels in our district. We've had benchmarked assessments that we've used in the past, Fontes-Spinell, the CBA for our math learners, Ames Web, there's a variety of ones that we've used before. But we are making an increased effort to be more diagnostic. In order to do that, we need to have better and more detailed information. And so the example that I gave you is really in some of our lower grade levels. But in ELA, we're using the Hegarty Phonemic Awareness Assessments. That is new to really drill down into some of the basics of reading, isolating words and sounds, blending phonemes, segmenting words, and really getting clear information on that in the beginning of the year, and then following up with assessments afterwards to see how our students are progressing. In math, we've created some new benchmark and checkpoint assessments. Also, to drill down into some of the details, you can see that in the report. Basics like number structuring, addition and subtraction, counting forwards, backwards. And so we have increased the amount of data, increased the amount of information in the detail of that, so that our teachers know exactly where our students are, how they're progressing, and therefore how we can be responsive to make sure we're differentiating along the way. We can't wait until after the school year is over. We need to be constantly monitoring and adjusting as we go. So I'm really proud of a lot of hard work and the sort of collaborative effort that's going on in the lower levels, lower grade levels. So that's sort of the first piece, but the next part of this aligns well with that. we've been trying to shift, really since I've been here for 5, 6, 7 years, to try to be a more student-centered environment, and that's ongoing. But there's some specific things that we've done this year. We've adjusted our math and reading frameworks, which were sort of created by our teachers with our math and reading specialist. Kara Morelos is math, and Jen Miller is our ELA specialist. So we've adjusted those. We've worked on adding different components, adding different resources at the K through 5 level. We've continued with the theme of increasing voice and choice and having some of that authentic reading in the classrooms. I mentioned that kind of flowing up through Harmon as well. One thing I'm really proud of our Harmon math teachers is they asked to do a book study, building things in classrooms. And they've really dove into that. We've done professional development. Morning math meetings, actually they start at 6:45, believe it or not, 6:45 a.m., the earliest meetings in the district. It could be a little painful for everybody, but they've been very productive. And they've implemented a number of new strategies that really engage students to a higher degree, allow them to reach our learners. So those are just some of the examples, and I did sort of want to give a little pat in the back, shout out to our specialists, our principals, and teachers. Really proud of the efforts that we've made this year. Coming off the pandemic last year, it was a little frustrating because we were so focused just on safety, and I felt like it held us back a little bit because we had to be so concerned with that. And I really feel good about the momentum we've had this year, seeing some of the progress of our students and seeing some of all this hard work and this focus on teaching and instruction pay off. And so that's in the short term, but certainly in the long term too, as the students progress through the grade levels. So I will stop at that point and see if the board has any questions on that too.
I have a question. What did you say about phonics? Because then I have a question about that. Did you say that's being measured?
So
younger grades?
So the phonemic awareness assessment breaks down different, the basic components of phonics.
And have we found during the pandemic that children are digressing in that? Because I'm not trying to start something again. I'm wondering how a teacher can teach phonics. I know several elementary school teachers who are still wearing masks even during this optional time, but they at least now can pull their mask down if they want to teach something specific. And what were they doing before that?
Right, so they would try to have be very clear with their speaking, and be behind the dividers. But with those specific aspects of reading, and even with global languages, and even with ELL students, it was very challenging. There were quite frankly, there were gaps, and there were some concerns in terms of students not on level. Sure, we had more of that than we've ever had here. Certainly, it was a greater need in other districts. But we are in a place right now where we're trying to recover from that, and we have that'll be with us for not just this semester. That's going to be with us for years. But our job is to try to close that gap sooner rather than later.
So, have you taken any assessments away, or have we only added more testing to the system?
These, in terms of these assessments, these are almost all required. The only ones that we added were the ones that I mentioned in terms of the math checkpoints and the phonemic awareness. And once a student reaches a certain level, they don't necessarily need to be reassessed. The good news about some of these assessments too, and I understand where you're going with this, is the concern about over-assessing. A lot of the assessments with the younger learners, like the F&P and even the CBA, the math, they're assessments, but they're almost like interviews. These are teachers sitting down with students, asking questions, and then seeing how they're responding, taking, running records, taking data. So it's not threatening. It's not like we're sitting them down in front of a computer, standardized tests, like 2 hours. It's a conversation, and then really seeing where the students are, where their strengths are, and if there are some deficits or issues that we could potentially address. So it's a very non-threatening situation.
Do you feel like you have the support of the teachers and principals for these assessments, and they're helpful?
Yeah, this real need has really come from our reading and math specialists and our principals and our teachers asking for more information and trying to come together to figure out how we can really drill down and have better data to help with our student progression learning.
Great, I'd love to see the data next year, you know, when you've got a couple of data points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've been to some of the board meetings before, I'll definitely be sharing some of that. And if you ever have other questions, I can, get a hold of me and share some of that.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you for that report. Thank you for the handouts. Thank you. Mr. Volleson, Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahalis. This evening, I just have the one resolution for your consideration, that being the financial report for the month of December. And in December, our expenditures exceeded revenues by about $3.9 billion, decreasing our general fund cash balance to $10.3 million 6 months into the fiscal year. Revenues were 7.6% less than projected, and expenditures about less than 1% less than projected. On the revenue side, really not a whole lot to talk about. December is a month where, other than getting a school foundation and some miscellaneous like interest and fees and that type of thing, not a big revenue month for us on a normal basis. On the expenditure side, in the employee retirement insurance benefits category, we spent $70,376 in workers' compensation premium payments. Just as a comparison, last year we spent $71,574, so pretty much on line with what we have been spending with overall. Also, December was one of our 3 pay months, so our personnel service costs were higher than what they normally would be. And then our purchase services included the second half payment of our property insurance in the amount of $54,000, and then the liability insurance for another $22,400. So about $76,000 in insurance payments, which is about half of our yearly premium. So thus far for the fiscal year, revenues are about $41,500 less than projected, and expenditures about $193,000 less than projected. So we have a favorable variance of a little bit over $150,000 halfway through the fiscal year.
Thank you. Exhibit D1 is a resolution to approve financial statements and reports. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Allison, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Dolzey?
Yes.
Mrs. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
All right, under action items, we have a resolution to accept gifts and contributions. We're thankful for an anonymous donation of $22,000. May I have a motion for approval? Move. Chair seconds. Any comments or questions? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Dolzey?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
All right, and then we have 8 personnel issues, which without objection we'll take together. I'll just read through the titles. We have a resolution to employ a long-term substitute teacher, resolution to employ licensed substitute teachers for the 21-22 school year, a resolution to employ support staff, resolution to employ support staff substitutes, resolution to approve changes to the employee manual, resolution to approve leave of absence requests of certified staff member, a resolution to approve the introductory appointment of support staff, and the last resolution is to approve the resolution to accept resignations. So that is E1, B1 through E1, B8. May I have a motion for approval?
Move.
Second. Are there any comments or questions?
I just, only because this is my first time through this, do we typically change the employee manual at this time every year? Is it something that happens every so often? Like,
Yeah, I think every so often probably is a good description. As we go back and revisit it, there are things that have kind of changed over time. And so it would be something, maybe every couple of years. It's been quite a while, actually, since this has last been changed. I'm trying to think, I think it was about 2013. So it was time to revisit and revise.
okay. And as I understand it, these are employees, not teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Teachers have their own
Yes, good clarification. So there are certified employees, which would be the teacher contract that we would use, their master agreement, and then they're classified employees, which fall under OPSI, which is again another union agreement. And this will be everybody else in that sense, so that's where the handbook falls.
And did the changes come from a committee, or have they been looked at before they came to us? So that people think that they're good changes? To me, they seem fine, but I don't know if they wanted something else.
Yeah, so we don't have a committee per se set up, but it's through conversations with those employees and things that have worked with administrators and things that we'd like to see changed based on those things. So, and we kind of ran some ideas past those employees that were impacted by it.
Do they have a way of suggesting changes so that we don't have to wait?
Yeah, so some of the changes came from them, yes, exactly. It's like, hey, can we revisit this? And then they'll point it out and then we'll go back and revisit it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Mr. Allison, please call the roll.
Mrs. Dolzey,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis.
Yes. Exhibit E1C is a resolution to establish student fees. May I have a motion?
Second.
Comments or questions? I have a question. It looks like it's all the same except maybe for some additions that are highlighted in black, darker black.
Yes, they are pretty much all the same, including our kindergarten fee, which is probably the biggest one that you saw in there. I think the student parking fee did not end up being changed, is that correct? Or did it get changed?
It's 35.
Okay, alrighty, that's the one that I was not sure, so the student parking did go up $10, which is actually, many districts that have like $90 for student parking and things like that, so it's still a great market to get there.
Too. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Allison, please call the roll.
Mrs. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Dolzey?
Yes.
Right, and we have no discussion items for tonight, right? And are there any board items? Okay, and I have a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Mr. Allison, please call the roll.
Mrs. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes,
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Dolzey?
Yes.
meeting is adjourned. Am I supposed to?